Alright, welcome back everyone dito sa latest episode ng RRW. Double RW. Of course, yung W natin ay yung ating minamahal na mentor, si Walden Bello. Just to be clear, just because he's mentor doesn't mean na wala kaming 60% disagreement. No, just kidding. And then of course,
ang tanong doon, gusto ba niyang
exactly. Parang is he proud? Parang si Walden
na pinoduce niya tayo. Parang wag kami ganun kasigurado.
Sige. Wag na lang. Okay, let's erase the mentor part. And then of course, kasama lang natin kagabi na nagrereklamo kasi pinahintay rin niya ako until yung isang gabi, si Secretary Ronald Liamas, o sige, Kong Bello at saka Secretary Liamas, kasi mamaya hindi na tayo nagre-respeto. So essentially our discussion today is Marcos to Marx, right? Essentially, but I want to parang Star Wars and reverse.
Parang Marx to Marcos.
Parang before tayo mag-Marcos, Duterte and all the contemporary issues, I want to ask about something that I think is not as much explored even in a lot of podcasts. Forget about mainstream media. Is paano kayo nag-activist? I'll start with you, Walden. How? Like, what attracted you to the left, especially back in the day? Bakit ang daming matatalinong tao at matitinong tao? I'm not sure that includes everyone in here. That this was, but
parang nagsimula sa Java.
Bakit dami na-attract sa the leftist perspective, the Marxist perspective, post-Marxist perspective? Is it a sense of social justice? Is it the intellectual sophistication? Is it just fad lang siya sa colleges dahil woke yung mga colleges? What attracted you, Walden, to the
Walden, hindi mo kailangan sagutin yung buong tanong. Parang thesis. Parang thesis siya.
Kailangan namin co-host. Double R doesn't mean ako pa rin yung big R. Walden, to the degree you want to answer me. Ganun lang. Sige.
Actually, yung transition ko from being public intellectual to activist was accidental.
Right.
Kasi lumalakad ako ron sa Princeton University noon.
Di ba? Social ka agad, di ba? Konyotic.
Lumalakad lang ako. Tapos, panahon nito nung in-invade ni Nixon ng Cambodia. Tapos, merong Institute of Defense Analysis na merong isang crowd na nagrarally. Out of curiosity, I crossed the street, tinignan ko. May mga nakaupo roon sa no?
Sa ground.
At naka-link arms sila.
Right.
So observe lang ako. Tapos dumating yung pulis. Yung paddy wagon. And they started to separate yung mga aktivista na nandoon. Hindi ko alam anong nangyari sa akin. Pero bigla na lang, nandun na ako.
I like it. Medyo postmodern yung movie. Wait, I'm also here.
Tapos,
nadamay ka. Damay.
Parang something was pulling.
Yeah. May gravitational pull. Wala naman maganda or... tayo baka. Forget about that.
Yung nasa kanan ko, yung foremost diplomatic historian ng US, si Arno Mayer.
Right, yeah. Oh, jeez.
Yung nasa kaliwa ko, foremost Latin American historian sa US.
Oh my God.
Pero hindi ko pa alam.
Ikaw lang hindi foremost.
Naman na ako. Lowermost lang ako doon. Boom! Nung ganun nangyari. Nahuli kami. And then we were sentenced and everything. Pero yung sabi ko na yun yung incident na
nag-trigger talaga.
So may eureka moment ka talaga. So that works. Like it was really a moment of enlightenment. Parang gano'n.
Yeah. Kasi, noong panahon na yun, if you were a foreign student, you got involved in politics, you would immediately deported.
Exactly. Alangan.
So nung na-arresto na ako, it came to me, putya, madi-deport na ako.
Yeah.
Tapos,
exactly yun nga eh. Oo.
Ang what saved me was that hindi pa pala nagko-coordinate yung police.
Different agencies.
Police ng Princeton.
Sa immigration.
That only happened with Osama bin Laden 2001. So, due to the inefficiency of the US government,
right,
I was able to continue my PhD.
So,
but after that, Yun na.
I want to ask you more kasi ayaw ko siyang tanong.
No. Sige.
No, but both of you had privileged backgrounds, right? I mean, just about you. Ano yung, di ba you come from a pretty privileged family background, di ba?
Huwag mo both of you.
Ano
Diba?
ba?
Magkaiba kami ng ako
Ikaw KGB ang background nito, ano?
Middle class
Princeton.
naman.
Yeah.
Middle class naman yung background.
Pero Ateneo ka, di ba? Nung ano, sila MVP bang classmate pa, di ba? Mga...
Pero,
So, higher middle class.
Upper middle class. Yeah.
inamin ko na yan. Inamin ko sa memoirs ko na taga-Ateneo ko. Pero dati, tinatago ko yan.
Yun ayaw ko sa'yo, hindi mo inamin na taga-Ateneo ka eh.
Arneo,
Arneo.
no? So, minsan lumalabas yung kanyang Jesuitic training, no?
Conyotic.
Dialectics, no?
So I finally decided, pag-aaminin ko, I might as well write about it. Even the various things that
I
happened
didn't
there.
know that the Cambodia connection, interesting. So, and then of course yung PhD mo had to do with Chile, Salvador Allende, the Pinochet thing. Can you tell us a little bit about the Latin American connection also?
So
you had to learn Spanish,
hindi lang
I
naman
suppose,
hindi lang naman yung pag-aresto sa akin. Pero I was already reading up on Marx, etc. So parang na-reorient na yung buhay ko habang nasa US ako. Pero nung nandito ako sa Pilipinas, even after graduation, the furthest I was an anti-religious rebel.
Parang medyo Rizal, 19th century.
Whatever.
Anti-clerico-fascist.
Anti-clerical.
Dahil nasa isang clerico-fascist school siya.
Okay. We're gonna go to you very shortly, Sir Ronald.
Pero totoo yan. At that time,
Pahamak talaga ito mga to.
at that time, Ateneo, pag pumunta ka ron, talagang American enclave yan.
Right.
Walang studies
Criticismo,
of this,
anything,
nothing.
Nothing critical.
And basta, sabi ko rito yung mga Dominicans and Franciscans, sin of commission that they tried to ban Rizal from being read. Pero yung mga Jesuits, sin of omission. Kasi, sige,
Right.
But we want to make a special program for him.
Right.
All you got at the Ateneo
Result.
was pure Western philosophy, Western history, etc.
Canons and all of that.
Ibang-iba sa UP. O sa UST.
Yeah, I was just about to go there. Ikaw, Ronald, because you come from UST yung background mo, journalism and all of that. UST is of course known as a kind of this was a bastion of Catholic education in Asia, the oldest university in Asia. Kumbaga, the only parallel I can think is Al-Azhar of Egypt. What it is to Muslims, right? Muslim education. You are to Asia here.
It's the only pontifical university.
Exactly. So ikaw, Sir Ronald, hindi naman yung naglalakad sa Princeton ang nangyari sa'yo. Sa recto ka ba naglakad nung nagkaroon ka ng epiphany?
Actually, similar.
Similar.
It was an accident habang naglalakad ako. Dahil lang high school ako, narinig ko si Senator Pepe Diok noon, kasalita.
Right.
Galing nito. Sabi ko, I want to be like him, no? Pero dahil wala naman akong pupuntahan na org, I was 13, 14, so wala akong outlet. So, nawala yon. Tapos, dahil yung parents ko ay nasa gobyerno, my mother ko nasa DND, Department of National Defense.
Sabi ko,
With Undersecretary Crisol, Home Defense. Tapos, nasa kwan siya, ODA, Office for Detainees Affairs. So, may mga horror stories siya nakikwento over lunch, over breakfast. Yun ang nangyayari sa mga detainees. Nabalitaan ko yung Canelia Sancho, etc. So, doon ako napopoliticize. Hindi yung mga
But was she
libro mo.
emotionally fraught when she said that? Or
Yes.
more bureaucratic?
My father was in Napolcom. Minsan naiiyak siya, kinikwento niya police corruption. So, doon ako na-politicize. Not because of books, not because of teach-ins. No? Doon ako nagsimula. Pero dahil nasa para akong army brat, no, dahil yung mother ko nasa Capaginaldo, nakikita ko si Colonel Vallejo, no, a small stocky guy, very intellectual. Tapos military type, parang Napoleon. Sabi ko, Lodi, idol. Kaya sabi ko, fourth year, mag-PPMA ako. No? And then, ang nangyari, yung ex-girlfriend ko pumunta sa UST, so sumunod ako, no? Paano kung mag-PMA daw ako, hiwalay na niya ako, so doon ako pumunta, no? Tapos, nung naglalakad ako sa corridor, sa outlet, sa UST, biglang may nakita ko na, exams para sa The Flame, yung campus paper.
Right.
Sabi ko, subukan ko nga to, hindi ko alam kung anong gusto kong karir. So, Gumawa ako, nagtap ako, naging feature editor ako. No? At the same time, naglalakad din ako sa corridor, may lumapit sa akin, ikaw ba yung Ronald Liamas na nagsusulat sa The Flame? Sabi ko, yes. Pwede ka ba naming imbitahin sa squatters area sa Tondo? Sabi ko, ano yung squatters area? No? Pero,
deracinate talaga outside reality.
yes,
talaga.
yes.
Oh,
Tapos pumunta ako, Baryo Magsaysay, nakita ko yung isang Atenista na Jesuita, si Father Romeo Intengan, na nagme-medical mission. No? So, doon naman ako nagsimulang nagkaroon ng outlet politically. Pero at the same time, nung naging feature editor ako ng The Flame, nandun nga si Father Albert Arejo, siya naman yung literary editor. 3 years ahead siya sa akin.
Right.
Sabi ko, ba't puro literary ito, puro poem? No? Sabi ko, itatransform ko ito into a more political paper. So, nung naging editor ako, 2 years later, no, binago ko yung The Flame. No, ginawa kong very political. Banat kay Marcos, etc., etc. At the same time, na-realize ko, teka, ba't wala kaming student organization? Magbuo nga ako ng student council. Yun yung first student council. Wala. Yun yung first time nagkaroon ng student council sa UST at saka sa UBELT. That was 79, no?
Right.
That was 79. Di ko alam kung nauna kami sa UP, no? So yun yung first time. We have to reinvent student power. Wala kaming kaalam-alam. Marcos babies kami, no? Martial law babies kami. So doon ko na-realize. Doon din kami natuto ng special ops. Binan yung isang issue namin, ng The Flame, dahil gumawa ko ng article about Enrile, Confessions of a Butcher. So nag-special ops kami, no? Naglagay kami ng mga baby rocket sa loob ng Dean's office, hinindihan namin, katol, so para tapos yung mga posporo, no, ganyan, etc. Nung yun, puro usok yung Dean's office, punta kami doon sa bodega. Kinuha namin lahat ng Flame. Tapos distribute namin sa iyo.
Literally The Flame kasi yung mo.
Isa pinatuto kami na within these limits, kailangan hindi kami pumayag. So naging creative kami. Yun yung first lessons namin sa special ops. Tapos di namin alam kung anong gagawin. Paano ba alabanan yung dictatorship? So yung aming chem student gumawa ng stink bomb. Tapos yung stink bomb, binuhos namin sa mga theaters. Yung mga bakwan. Tapos nandun kami sa labas, nagdi-distribute na manifesto. Ito yung baho ng diktadura. No? We were kids. No? We were practically kids, 16, 17. So, dyan din kami natuto ng mga ganyan. No? At doon namin tinayo, in that context, yung first student council sa UST. Nung una ko nga General Assembly, tinanong ako ng advisor, Mr. President, see if there's a quorum. Tumingin ako sa kanya, what is a quorum? Talagang wala kaming kalaman.
Talagang zero.
So lahat yan accident. No? Kung tumuloy ako sa PMA, baka ang bala ko kasi intelligence dahil mga nababasa kong books nung high school tungkol sa spy versus spy. So kung nagkataon ako, tumuloy ako dyan, no? Kabatch ko si General Anyo. So, batch 82 ako kung sakali.
Very smart guy. I interviewed him too.
Hindi kami magkakasabay nung...
Very smart guy.
So, tama si Walden. Accidents happen.
Right, but it's never late. And we'll talk about RevGov later on. We still can become dictators and all. So may chance pa tayo sa Ronald to fulfill our subconscious dreams.
Lahat yan nasa loob mo eh. Delay mo lang eh. No?
There is a Pinochet inside. But Sir Walden, going back to this, he was talking about the martial law background. Obviously, even more in your case.
Ibang generation kami, ha?
Yeah, I know. Even more in the sense that you even saw more of the martial law. So, how come it took you all the way in the Princeton grounds to have that moment of epiphany? Is it because your family didn't suffer as much during... Sorry, am I getting reference points wrong here?
Pumunta ako sa US mga 69.
Wala pa palang martial law pala.
I missed the whole FQS period.
But like the elections were messed up already by 1965, right? And I mean, like things were not looking good in the Philippines.
But if you were at the Ateneo,
you're deracinated also.
Well, I wasn't at I wasn't really in UP.
Right.
I was in the Jesuit school.
Okay. Kasi when you said Nixon, Kissinger, I was thinking about Cambodia bombing.
70s
na yan. Yeah, exactly.
70.
So just before martial law, essentially, diba? Not long before. So when the martial law hit,
ang nag-politicize sa akin, hindi yung situation sa Philippines,
yun nga,
kundi yung Vietnam War.
Exactly.
I remember, I was at the biggest rally, November 15, 1969. Kararating ko lang.
Right.
Dinala ako ng kaibigan ko doon. And then I said, oh, ano ito? You know, there's...
Vietnam War.
Yeah. And then, ganon, nabuksan na yung mind ko about looking at progressive literature.
Right.
And noong in-invade ni Nixon ng Cambodia
Yeah, the
at
bombing
ni Kissinger,
campaign. Yeah.
parang something happened.
Right.
But ang sense
Is it the
ko,
images? Were you looking at the images of children?
Oy,
getting killed?
yan yung first war na lumalabas sa
Yeah.
TV as it happens.
Parang this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the first version of what we see in Gaza now. Yeah.
well, siguro nakita kong hinihilan ng mga pulis at binabatuta yung mga
Right.
estudyante. Yun siguro.
Fashion.
Siguro yung...
But Walden, sir, did you have? I'm wondering because you were saying in the Philippines you didn't want clerical fascism, whatever. In the U.S., ba? Did you think U.S. was a liberal state? Like, did you have romanticized understanding of the U.S. state machinery that you were shocked by the brutality of the police in Princeton? Like, what was going on there?
Oh, well, I wasn't really that
Enamored
of the U.S. I just was there to
Study,
do my graduate
Yeah.
studies in sociology. And that would have happened if I was not walking down that street at that particular time and I did not encounter all of these people. The furthest I would probably would be a progressive public intellectual. But
Parang si Haydar.
no, I did. Come on.
Even that is questionable.
May debate pa doon sa pagiging
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Medyo both
anyway.
debatable. Yeah. Sorry.
Anyway,
It's your coffee. I'm sorry. Na-hyper ako sa coffee mo, sir.
yeah, but anyway, basta, ang alam ko, inisip ko na lang kung ano mangyayari sa akin after I jumped there and got arrested at
Ma-expel
nabatutan ng
ka.
police.
So namulat si Walden sa American imperialism. Yun ang entry point niya
Yun
sa...
ang
Yeah.
point ko was that
Yeah.
like your first encounter with the boots of the American empire, kumbaga, di ba? Like literal, di ba? Something like that.
I would say so kasi pag may mga binabatuta ang pulis, naroon ka, hindi ka na maaaring maging observer lang eh. Whatever liberal ka or what. When you see that happening, you either stand back and watch them being beaten up or you go there and be beaten up yourself. Yun, basta I blank out before I knew it, I was there.
Pero ang kaibahan ni Walden, meron siyang kahit paano, ideological tsaka political framework.
Yeah.
Dahil intellectual na siya
Yeah,
at that time eh.
kasi
No, nagsusulat na siya, expose siya sa mga ibang ideas. Pero iba kasi yung defining na talagang napalabang ka, di ba?
Yeah.
Yung architecture for yan.
Kami kasi wala eh.
Totoo.
Wala kaming intellectual political background eh. Na katulad ni Walden. Madali na i-connecta. Ito pala yan. Ito pala yan. Ganito.
So your journey was a little bit more circuitous or more rough texture of reality kumpara sa kanya.
We have to reinvent yung politics namin noon. We don't know anything about student power. We don't know anything about yung sinasabi mong mga Marxist books. Wala kami ganyan. May kaunti kami introduction, nagsimula about liberation theology. Doon kami nanggaling. Yung Pueblo sa Latin America. Doon kami nagsimula. Christianity in the catacombs. When it was not yet a state religion. Yun yung aming foundation.
So adjacent,
And
parang
then-
Marxist adjacent.
Yes, and then we discovered the Hegelian framework.
Right.
We discovered the Young Marx. We discovered Gramsci. So iba yung aming ruta eh.
Yeah.
Kaya hindi rin kami masyadong naging dogmatic. Dahil iba yung dinaanan namin.
Totoo.
So organic, very organic.
Yes.
Very Gramsci. in that
Yes,
sense,
pero nung panahon na yon, you were the editor of almost all the campus papers, etc. You're the president of the Journalism Society. You're the president of the Inter-University Student Journalism Society, etc. So writing. No, nung nag-drop out ako, I was the editor of the Federation of Free Workers newspaper. And then, doon na pumunta, nag-take na ng toll yung organizing. Iba yung imperatives ng organizing.
Yeah.
And then, fast forward, pag makita mo yung sulat ko, undramatical na. Parang yung mga privilege speech sa mga congressman. No?
Parang quote. Parang kilala ko sa WhatsApp na gano'n. Parang
Kaya minsan nahihiya ako magsulat, natatakot ako eh. Kung titingnan mo yung blank paper. Dahil nakalimutan mo na yung technique eh. Nakalimutan mo na yung... Unlike si Walden, ito, nagkukanto eh. Nagkukanto si Walden eh. Nagda-diarrhea ng libro eh.
Yeah.
No, talaga.
But just on that, you never lose your fear when you begin writing.
Fear of...
Looking at the blank paper.
Looking at the blank paper.
yeah.
Nakakatakot talaga.
Yes. I know. I feel that.
I see.
Lakad ka siguro. It's only after a day that you can
Yeah.
until it writes itself. It's the hardest part about writing.
Starting.
Is beginning, and I have not lost that fear.
Yeah.
So it medyo interesting. Kami kasi vlogger na kami.
I know.
Hindi siya natatakot.
Hindi siya natatakot. Yeah.
But thanks to actually the person I'm most thankful to, if kay Ronald in terms of political vlogging, it's in terms of writing, right? You were the one who pushed me. No, right. So I'm very grateful.
Buti na lang hindi siya nag-fail.
Sorry. Greatest student of all. I'm just kidding. Nung sinabi ni Walden sa recommendation niya, top 5%. Excuse me? Top 5%?
Hindi. Top 1%.
Hindi, nung before pa. Yung first recommendation niya sa akin, top 5%. So, nag-calculate ako.
Ay,
If
Lord.
you had 1,000 students,
Ay,
so I'm
Lord.
only better than, like, that's
Ay,
how
Lord.
bad I am. Ganun, Sir Ronald, you think I'm bad now? You should have seen my younger version.
Buti na lang hindi tayo naging magkaklase.
Sabi ko kay Sir Walden buti hindi natin kaibigan si Ronald masyado dati, di ba? Ngayon lang natin friends si Ronald. Talagang grabe yung personality natin. No, but I actually think, kasi ako rin, again, maybe hindi mag-agree si Teddy Casino, but ako rin accidental progressive. But Sir Walden, balikan natin.
All I know
Sige.
is that
Sige.
is si Richard.
Ayun tayo.
I was so grateful to him that I would always list him as number 1 because he saved me from a beating in Italy.
Yeah.
I was about to be beaten up by this big Arab
Palestinians.
man.
Twice
And-
my size,
And he put himself there. Sabi ko,
Physical courage.
since I owe my life to him,
Yeah.
he will always be number top 1%.
Top 1%. Nag-bump up ako because of that.
Sorry, Walden, hindi ako masyado convinced.
Just to be clear, Just to be clear.
Sorry,
I stood there with my Salvatore Ferragamo shoes. So, imagine what would have been lost if
Tingin ko, nung nasa harap ka, nakatingin ka doon sa harap mo, kumikindat-kindat ka ngayon, tapos hindi lalabas ka na...
baka na. May witness kami. Kung may ex-girlfriend ka to the nth level, yun din yung isang ex-girlfriend na nakin. But anyway,
Actually, hindi naman nagsimula yung fake news ngayon.
Yeah. Sir Ronald, balikan natin ito. So, I wanna also ask you about, obviously, your different generation. So, what was your...
Pero nagsalubong yung generation namin.
Exactly. At some point, nag-blend
sa
in.
LA, yung kinag-uusapan namin conference,
Right.
no, na binanata, minumura sila, yung mga dogmatic, hardline Maoist. No? Tapos,
Ayan na.
I made fun of them
Ayan.
Yun yung first introduction ko sa
Yeah.
heckling in the internationals. Doon kami nagsalubong.
The leftist...
Hindi ko pa kilala si Walden,
Yeah.
nababasa ko na yung libro niya. Pero nagsalubong kami noon. No?
So, I wanna ask, before we go into the
That was
intra-left...
late 80s yun Late 80s.
No,
early 90s?
1994.
Okay. Mid-90s.
Masyado ka naman nag-advance.
Hindi, nakalimutan ko na
Advance ka talaga mag-isip, Sir Ronald. I just wanna understand...
Kasama si Professor Nemenzo at that conference.
Someone we want to also talk about
Yeah.
soon, because this is also in memoriam. Walden, what was the effect of the martial law declaration by Marcos? Kasi obviously, if you're familiar with Latin America, everyone was going through the motions,
Yes,
no?
yeah.
One democratic regime falling after the other. So, was it shocking? Was it emotionally shocking, but intellectually not shocking? Did you see it as part of a bigger Cold War dynamic?
Do you remember where were you
Oh,
then?
at that moment.
No? Ano ginagawa mo?
Kit tatad ba? Tama. Kasi sabi ko ibang Kit Belmonte. Sabi ko, ayan na naman tayo.
Nagsasalita
Kit
si
tatad,
Kit
di ba?
Tatad.
Kit tatad. Yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah. Then, ginagawa ko yung dissertation ko sa Chile noon.
And then nag-martial law sa Philippines.
Oo, nasa September yan. Nandun ako sa mga nag-i-interview ng mga kanan sa Chile. And then, boom, ito na. So, pero tinapos ko muna yung mga interviews ko. Bumalik ako sa US. And at this was around March of 1973.
Right.
Kasi 72 yung kwan. Nag-hook up na ako sa mga aktivista ron. Kasi I missed the FQS. Para kung neophyte, So,
Pero parang uhaw ka rin, naghahanap ka.
naghahanap pa rin.
Yeah.
So yung may mga nanggagaling dito na first quarter storm ng mga graduates, nag-hook up na kami sa New York.
Do you remember some of their names?
Sila Rene Cruz,
Yeah.
Amy
Syria
Cruz.
yeah.
So ito yung mga... So they were the
UP
ones
na to
who...
medyo UP ang first quarter storm.
Sila, they were... Marami sa kanila talagang nahasa na sa National Democratic Literature struggle. Sa akin, kasi nga wala akong niyang activist experience, I was in a neophyte mode.
Interesting.
Basta ang sinasabi nila, I was really putting it in a
Can you imagine Walden as a neophyte, innocent, no? Starry-eyed.
Ganyan na
Starry-eyed lang, pero hindi.
Binasa ko na yung kay Joma. And then, yun, I ended up, na-recruit na ako sa CPP. And that began my
14
to 15 years. I was a dedicated cadre of the Communist
Cadre.
Party of the Philippines. Cadre.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So marami palang konyong na
Marami.
Princeton
Marami,
graduate. Yung mga
mga
ganun.
recruit, mga
Oh my
legends.
God.
Nung first quarter storm. Mga
Dami
ano
parang
yun,
nabudol.
Oo.
Talaga.
Na-recount ko nga rin sa memoirs ko yan. Yung I was, pag cadre ka or cadre ka, talagang aktivista ka na todo. Wala akong, I had no permanent job.
Yeah, exactly. Yun nga.
All I was subsisting was, I would sleep in the couch of
a friend.
of the friends. And
So, romantic essentially.
Tsaka feel mo yung revolution.
Yeah, exactly.
Feel yun.
Parang cosplaying of Lenin.
Habang umiinom ka ng kape, habang nagdi-discussion kayo, talagang feeling mo kung kayo di ba?
Parang hanggang ngayon ganyan ka sa Ronald. Feeling ko, parang...
ang sense ko nga, may pagka-element of hypnosis. Pero a good one.
Good cosplaying also.
You just snapped out of it during sa EDSA. Doon ako na, that's what happened to me.
There's something broader.
But before we go at snapping out of the hypnosis, kasi I want to also ask Ronald about this. Was it because, and that's our problem now in the 21st century, and we can go about the Perry Anderson theory, like the idea that, or Frederick James, this idea na there was a sense na a different world is possible. Something that probably is harder for us in this era of simulacro and postmodern nonsense, right?
Oh, you put it very well.
Parang ganun, di ba?
Yeah,
a different world is within our grasp, right? Let's go for it. Right?
Baudrillard.
Our movement, history, and we were all on the same trajectory.
Exactly,
because history was on our side. Yun yung malakas na...
Ang lakas na effect. Yun ang hypnosis. That's the hypnosis.
Yan yung panahon na yan. Yan yung panahon na sinulat ni Baudrillard, yung simulation ng simulacra. Yan yun, no? Tapos nakita mo yung EDSA, di ba? Na practically simulacra rin. No?
Before we go to the depressing 1980s, ikaw, sir, obviously you're from the younger generation. And
obviously.
Oh, well, let's just say we're friends yet still. No, but sir, what was the effect of martial law? How did your family absorb it? Because they're part of Napolcom. Obviously, directly involved. I don't want to put I'm not saying it in an incriminating way, pero yung stakes are very high. In his case kasi, he's, in
they were afraid. They were very afraid, pero never nila ako hinarangan. No?
Really?
Yeah. Almawa, galing ako sa demolisyon sa Barrio Magsaysay sa Tondo. No? First time ko nakitang hinahampas ng yantok, yung mga Metrocom hinahampas yung mga buntis ng mga squatters. No?
Right.
First time, pag-uwi ko, sugat-sugatan ako. Hindi ako pinapagalitan ng mother.
Because they know you're doing the right thing.
Yes. Then, alam naman nila, namulat ako dahil sa kanila. Whether they like it or not. No? Whether they intended it or not. So, may ganon. No? Pero nung nasa university ako, at I also went underground while a student, no? Doon na yung debate about strategies. Dahil yung aming leader, gusto Paul Mill, political military action.
Exactly.
Tapos nagkaroon ng isang disaster na Paul Mill activity. Kami mga student leaders, no, sabi, What are we doing?
Yeah.
Wala pa nga tayong base, pupunta na tayo sa mga ganyang klase
Yeah.
action. So, nag-decision kami, we have to organize first. No? Problema, wala kaming makitang mga seniors sa amin. Unlike kila Walden kasi, may tradition. FQS, UP Commune, etc. So, merong mga generation na magagaling.
May fondasyon.
Na pwede nilang sabihin na elders nila. Kami wala eh. So, kami yung elders. So, we have to reinvent itong pinagsimulan namin na Christian progressive ethos. No? And we began to read books. Doon namin, dahil wala namang curriculum, so iba't ibang libro yung nakuha namin. We were shaped by different motivations, different impulses, different intellectual at saka ideological impulses. Tapos yung synthesis niyan, shape what we are. No? At doon kami nakapunta sa isang progressive ethos which has to be democratic.
Yeah.
No, yun yung namin. It has to be humanist. Hindi ito dapat na yung mga pinanggalingan ni Walden, no? Mga talagang destroy the state, no, by any means possible, no, primarily through armed struggle. Hindi ganun yung aming dogma. Ako namin ay let's be eclectic, no, let's be more open to other ideas. Let us fight the dictatorship, but not to become dictators ourselves, no? Yun yung aming
parang ayoko maniwala si Ronald na ganyan kayo.
So, whether tama o mali, doon kami nanggaling. At hindi siya shaped ontologically. It was a work in progress. At later on, when we were still young, in our 20s, no, nung nag-drop out kami, na-meet namin sila Dodong, sila Randy, no, na-meet namin yung mga yan.
Let's talk about them because let's talk about Dodong because of course, in many ways
but I just wanted to say that this is I'm learning a lot kasi I did not know this part of the left. And it's only now that Ronald is showing the origins. Of course, we eventually joined together in Akbayan. Pero yung parteng yan, nung 80s, ng Social Democratic Movement,
ibang tradition.
Blank sa akin. Black box.
Yeah.
And that's why, nung kinekwento ni Ronald dito, oh my
yung
God, ito
backstory,
na nangyayari. Doon. Kaya pala, ganito.
There was a whole stream and a mountain that he was not aware that eventually will converge.
And like
Akbayan.
Like Walden, we also left the institutional Social Democratic Party. Madalang tingin namin, may mga mali. Umali siya dun sa institutionalized National Democratic Party. So, doon yung panahon na nagsimula kami mag-gravitate to a different ethos. No?
So, defection, both stories, is it both a story of defection?
Institutionally, nag-meet yan sa Akbayan in the late...
sa 1990s na tayo.
Nung nabuo kasi yung music with Dodong at saka hindi ko pa kilala si Walden. Baka nasa US pa siya.
But before we go to the Akbayan story, I still wanna... So let's talk about Dodong. Both of you, I want... For the purpose of people who are not from UP, kasi kami, of course, we know him, he was our president. I just want people to realize na ang daming mga sobrang mga galing na mabuting tao sa progressive movement sa Philippines who deserve to be recognized and whose stories should echo through generations. So for millennial and especially Gen Z, right? Sir Ronald, can you give me an idea of who the man and the moment and the works? And then I'll also obviously ask Walden also.
Well, as a background, nung 85, dyan nabuo yung First United Front Against the Dictatorship, yung Bayan. No, on the second day of its Congress, it broke down. No, dahil yung mga kaibigan ni Walden gustong i-dominate, i-take over yan. So, pero 4 blocks yan, no? Not them, sock them, leave them, at independence. Doon ko nakita yung mga independents, no? Sila Pepe Jokno, sila Dodong, sila Randy, etc. Nung nag-break up yan, binuo nila yung Independent Caucus. No, na naka-center sa Third World Study Center. Isang leader nung kasama ko dati sa Social Democratic Movement, no, si Jolly Makuha, ay inimbita para magsalita about social democracy. Nalaman ko, pinaghahandaan siyang banatan. At si Jolly, dahil UP crowd yan, tapos puro mga non-social democrats, sabi niya, Ronald, pwede bang ikaw magsalita? No, ikaw yung pumunta. So, pumunta. Dahil nung work ako nun sa Workers College sa Ateneo, no, organizing trade unions. So, pumunta ako. Tapos, andito na, kita mo na yung mga Randy David, Karina David, Dodong Nemenso, Jojo Abinales, yata, naghahanda na mag-gang up sa'yo, no? Pagsalita ko, I criticize social democracy. as the second line of imperialism. No? As
Sisi
a
talagang
sophisticated kind of capitalism.
I
no?
knew it.
Et cetera, et cetera.
I knew it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
inunahan mo
So,
sila.
nagulat sila. No?
Oh.
So, na-disarm sila, hindi sila nakabanat. No?
Galing,
Pero after
galing
nung talk ko, kinausap ako ni Randy Dodong. Sabi niya, pwede ka ba maimbita, mag-usap? So, pupunta kami sa bahay ni
Magaling ka
Randy.
talaga, yeah.
First time namin na-meet si Roger Posada, si Dodong, etc. So, anong grupo niyo? Sabi ko, mas Christian socialist. No? Ganyan. Sabi niya, ano yung Christian socialism? How can you justify your Christianity?
Yeah.
How can you explain that
Yeah.
in dialectical materialism,
Yeah.
in economic determinism? So, ganun yung unang salbo namin, no? Ganyan, no? Etc. Bago ako makasagot, sumagot si Dodong.
He came.
Sabi niya, Marxism also believes in higher consciousness.
Yeah,
This could be spirituality, this could be the essence of Christianity, pero ito yung ibig sabihin ng socialism. Hindi siya sarado, no, sa concept ng spirit, no, etc. etc. Si Roger Plazadas nag-intervene, sabi niya, maraming bagay ang hindi mo kayang ipaliwanag sa dialectical materialism at saka economic determinism. Katulad ng theory of negative squares. Quantum physics. Hanggang ngayon, hindi ko alam yung theory of negative
wala pang
squares.
string theory pa
Parang sinasabi lang ni
quantum
Roger
mechanics na siya. Yeah.
Hindi ka pwedeng maging dogmatic. Yan sa mga foundations ng Maoism, Marxism, Leninism.
Because they're not all encompassing to. Yeah.
So, doon din kami. At the rest was history. Nagsama na kami. Yun yung introduction namin dito sa progressive organization. Yung Independent Caucus eventually became BSIG. Bukluran sa Ikaw ng Sosyalistang Isip at Gawa. At doon din namin nakausap sila Rene Sierra Cruz. Pinagawa namin siya ng papers para isulat yung wala kaming alam sa sa election wala kaming alam sa ganyang klaseng trabaho So, pinagawa namin siya later sa 80s para gumawa ng paper about forming a political party. Fast forward, it took us more than a decade bago nag-decide kami na i-maximize namin ng EDSA, no? EDSA Democratic Space, at magbuo kami ng sarili namin. Dahil after EDSA, pumalit din, mga dynastist din mga warlords din hindi nang pumalit. Kaso, wala namang alternative yung tao. No? Yung Partido ng Bayan was defeated. Tapos since then, ang ethos ng kaliwa is armed struggle. At least the bigger left. No? So kami, sabi na, we have to provide an alternative. Pero it took some time Si Rene was one of those who painstakingly wrote the premises, which eventually became Akbayan in 96, 97. Yun yung fast forward.
Ikaw, Walden, what was your exposure to Dodong ni Menzo, and also, what is your read of his intellectual and also activist contributions?
Well, I mainly met Dodong first through his writings.
Right.
Kasi he was a real
Intellectual,
theoretician.
yeah.
Kung ano yung, tsaka alam ko rin that he used to be with the old PKP, Partido Komunista ng Pilipinas, at naging one of the Young Turks. Together with Jose Maria, his son.
Yes.
And so throughout those years, talagang he was one of the stalwarts of the Philippine left. No?
The young intellectuals. The young...
So, na-meet ko na lang siya nung pumunta nga dun sa 1994 conference sa Berkeley, that's the first time.
Hindi pala yung first time.
Yun the first time.
First
and
time
then,
na-meet kita.
So Berkeley is really where all of you came
and then
together.
nagturo
Interesting.
and then I met him again. He was teaching in Japan.
Right.
And I was also teaching there at that time. And then that's when I began my association with Princess and
The wife,
Dodong. And then they were also involved with Akbayan. So, all I know is that talagang the one thing that's very solid about Dodong is he never gave up his view that socialism is the wave of the future.
Right.
Despite the 1990s, despite neoliberalism,
despite the Fukuyama thesis and all that.
And now we're seeing how he was right. Basta sabi ko nga
Interesting.
dun sa
biography.
dun sa during the memorial for Dodong.
First funeral,
Na yung stand niya na yun was very inspiring. Kasi marami sa amin nagda-doubt na. Especially nung yung Fukuyama, bumagsak ang Soviet
End of
Union.
history.
Ano kaya mangyayari ngayon? Were we on the wrong path? Sayang lang pa tayo ng
exactly.
panahon.
Ng buhay niyo. Exactly. I can imagine how shocking.
Pero pag si Dodong, sigurado.
Yeah.
This still the way.
He was like the Zen master. Just wait. You know, like, alam mo
Yeah.
Like, dun sa...
Actually, siya na-convince sa amin eh. Sabi
Zen
niya,
master.
Ronald,
Like,
kilala mo ba si Walden? Sabi ko, met him once. No? Sabi niya, gawin nating head ng akbayan, no? Et cetera. So, na-meet namin si Walden again, for the second time, sa bahay ni Dodong. Nandun kami apat. No? Tapos nag-offer kami sa kanya na maging... Pero si Dodong, bagamat crucial siya sa pagtatayo ng bisig, akbayan, etc., that was the golden age of coalitions, ha? For the first time, lahat ng labor groups nagsama-sama sa LACC. For the first time, lahat ng political tendencies nagsama-sama sa National Movement for Civil Liberties at saka Freedom from Death Coalition. For the first time, lahat ng peasant groups nagsama-sama sa CIPAR, Congress for a People's Agrarian Reform. Ang daming kanyan, ha? Ngayon, na hindi mo nakikita, that was the time, yung after EDSA. Unfortunately, it didn't last. No? Pero yan yung context ng mga binabanggit namin ni Walden, no? Na sana may magsulat, no? Dahil sana maulit-uli yun. No? Pero yun yung panahon na si Dodong, bagamat isa sa founder ng akbayan, hindi siya nagpalimit sa electoral or parliamentary. Naniniwala pa rin siya na doon sa rapture. No? To destroy the monopoly of the elites.
The oligarchy.
No? Ay kinakailangan magkaroon ng rapture, which could be to a combination of uprising, electoral struggle, etc. So may ganun siyang broader na pagtanaw na mahalaga, no? Kaya nag-explore siya ng TRG, Transition Revolutionary Government, nung panahon ni GMA, etc.
Yes, I
Nakulong siya
remember
sa isang military
Yes, I
uprising
remember that,
sa Manila Peninsula with Trillanes. No?
Pasaway nga,
So medyo broad yung kanyang perspective. Much broader than us. No? Kaya yun yung ma-appreciate mo. Pero pinakamahalaga sa akin kay Dodong was the sense of humor. No? During critical times, during times of weakness, doubts, lagi siya nagpapatawa. So he lifts your spirits up not through ideological dominance, kundi humor.
So doon mo natutunan
he learns, he laughs at himself. No, hindi lang niya nire-ridicule yung iba. Pinagtatawanan niya yung sarili niya. Kung hindi mo kayang pagtawanan yung sarili mo, paano mo pagtatawanan yung iba? Yun yung natutunan ko kay Dodong. No? Kaya at the same time, kaya siya pluralist.
Right.
Paano kung hindi ka marunong tumawa, hindi mo yayakapin yung diverse groups of the movement. Yun yung nawala sa kanyang passing. Yung ganong klaseng spirit, yung ganong klaseng leadership, yung encompassing, no, eclectic, dahil meron siyang sense of humor. No, hindi niya siniseryoso yung sarili niya. Siya lang ang tama. No, he looks at others, may elements ng tama rito, dito may elements ng mali, etc. Yun yung kailangan sana na maibalik sa progressive movement. No? Dahil puro ideological, no, puro debate, puro tactics and si Dodong may iba eh. There was, nung unang harap namin, there was a higher consciousness. There was a spirit. No? Yun yung kanyang spirituality. Yun yung kanyang humor.
I remember with Dodong, we discussed the Arab uprising because my first book was on that, and I could see how animated he was with the hope of possible transformation. And you look at it, like, after Arab uprising of 2010, 2011, for 15 years, everyone thought the thing is over. And then suddenly now you have the Syrian rupture, right? Again, there's a possibility. So, siguro he's really a Zen master, the way I see him, right? Yung Zen, like, hintayin mo lang, there's a next chapter, hindi pa tapos ang kwento. So, wisdom and humor was something very
important. And the anchor never disappeared. Yung ideological anchor. Yung moral anchor, hindi nawala yun. Kahit daming nangyayari, mga tao nalilito, maraming mga changes, no, etc.
Dami nag-sell out.
Meron siyang anchor.
Dami nag-sell out.
Meron siyang anchor. No? Yun yung mahalaga sa kanya.
But, at saka yung sabi nga ni Ronald, except of course for solid fascists and reactionaries, he was willing to work with anybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, you know, and nobody was off limits to work with so long as it would contribute to widening democratic space.
Interesting.
You know? And I remember, kayo nila Dodong were talking about, of course, you know, kasi yung usual view of the military is that ruling class institution. But for Dodong, there are times when the military can be an ally, and it's when it begins to unravel.
Because, naniniwala siya na during a rupture, one of the key elements is
the
to
military.
divide the coercive arm of the state, no? At magsimula mag-unravel yung Anshan regime, no? Yung tawag niya Anshan regime, na ito yung ruling system, no? At
Coalition
crucial
of
diyan
reactionaries,
yung division, rupture within the military. So may ganun siyang ideological mooring at pinapaliwanag namin yan, no? Na sana maunawaan din na this is a multi-form struggle. Meron kang mga elements na hinihintay para sa magsimula yung socialism, no? Meron ding international struggle. Dodong was always an internationalist. Pag tatanungin mo siya sa nangyayari around the world,
That's what I'm saying. With Egypt, we were having a long conversation about Egypt, Tahrir Square,
even during time of ebb, no, global intellectual progressive ebb, hindi siya nadidisillusion. Andun siya, like a rock, very steady, no, at hindi siya nabibili.
Maybe that's the Christian spirit in him, like the sense of faith in a way, but a secularized kind of progressive. I want to go back to this because if you ask an average Filipino or even an average intellectual even, like the impression they have of the left is that masyadong factionalized, masyadong divided. Because everything we're talking about here is a convergence point, and we'll discuss even more with Akbay and the ultimate convergence of practically all of us here, right? But very vicious yung fights, diba? I mean, I don't even need to go back to the Bolsheviks, right? Or Bolshevik versus Mensheviks. I mean, where do you think that comes from? Is it because of overflow of zealotry? Is it because of the passions of the argument? Is it because it's inevitable when all you're fighting is really about a utopian ideas? Kasi the thing with the oligarchs is that they're concrete material things. Ay pare, pag mag-away tayo, sayang, mawalan ka ng 10 hektarya, mawalan ka ng... Pero sa progressives, the stakes are different, right? The stakes are about the utopia. I just want, parang for the lay audience na hindi steeped into the to the kind of progressive world. I won't even call it Marxist world because, as you mentioned, there are many stripes to it. Where is that factionalism or division coming from? And or maybe you disagree with me that maybe it's not really as divided as people think. But from your experience, kasi ang dami mo rin nadaanan di ba? What is your read, Walden?
Ang sense ko lang, well, it's several things, no? One is noong panahon ni Marcos, at least in the tradition I was in, yung National Democratic tradition. Actually, there was during that period, it was organizing very well in the underground and reaching out to people because it had very non-dogmatic approaches, especially sa mga kwan. No? So, ang tingin ko yung that that non-dogmatic approach na learning from the facts, even as you're working towards a goal, in a way nawala noong that period of EDSA. No? Na kasi and that's why that was a really important part in the history of the left.
So yun yung juncture, yun yung critical juncture when things went wrong.
Yeah, okay. Kasi you know, yung naging response was hindi iiwanan ng US si Marcos.
Yun yung read.
Yun yung read. At saka, therefore, this election is not...
it will not produce any rupture.
It will not produce any rupture.
Okay.
You know. But, there were already people on the ground that were basically saying...
the
people are being mobilized. No? So, ang nangyari dyan is that the US was able to adjust. Kasi
to save its own interest.
Yeah, it was able to adjust to dump Marcos. No? But unfortunately, the left, kasi nga may sense na hindi iwanan ng US yan. At saka, it's impossible that the US is going to abandon Marcos. And even if the evidence
but
of
why
the census...
why did they... Is it because of the effect of Third International? Is it the effect of the Maoist framework? Was that the ideological blinder there?
There was an ideological blinder. Yung the sense that the state is always the arm of reaction.
The committee for the management of the affairs of the oligarchy or empire.
Right. So, but okay, that's a general thing. I guess what we would say is that in general, yes. But the important thing, which we were talking about with Dodong, is the concrete situation.
Yeah.
And the concrete situation was a wrong reading. And that's why the left called for that boycott and became marginalized in this process. And the US took advantage of that, sumakay doon sa insurrection, and basically was able to reestablish a liberal democratic regime.
Yes.
And-
Tama si
yeah.
Walden. Sinabi niya, maraming mga impulses na naka-influence dyan sa factionalism, divisions na yan. No? Siyempre, pero to focus on 2 or 3, no? Yung una ay pagpasok mo sa movement, you became part of something bigger than you.
Yourself,
an idea, an organization. No? Parang akapit ka para kang toko na hahawa ka rito intensely at ipaglalaban mo siya. No? Yung 1.5 decades ni Walden within the Communist Party or ganyan, or movement. No? Talagang hahawakan mo yan. And all others are wrong. Ikaw lang ang tama. Tapos nadagdagan pa yan dahil meron kang fascist state.
Yun ang zilotry na sinabi ko.
Nadudurugin ka. So you became, lalo ka naging fanatical. Dahil to survive the repression
You
of
have
the
to
state,
hunker down.
you have to be more fanatical,
exactly.
no? To
You hunker
survive.
down,
No? So lalong yung unang entry mo na being part of an idea or bigger than you, nadagdagan pa ng repression ng state. No? So lalo kang naging
Reinforced.
dogmatic, consolidated, lalo ka naging self-righteous. Ikaw lang ang tama. Pero nung nagkaroon ng opening up, nung early 80s, nangyari yung EDSA, then new ideas are being privately as well as publicly being discussed. So medyo na-open. Kaya nagkaroon na ng mga factions, splits, at nagkaroon ka rin ng golden age ng coalitions. Pwede pala magsama, kahit magkakaiba. Whether labor, whether peasant, whether ideological, political organization. So, kailangan tignan mo yung ganong klaseng context. Ang problema, hindi na-sustain at kinulang ka nung Dodong element.
Yeah.
A sense of humor in the midst of all this, no? A mooring, no? Na at the same time, hindi mo sineseryoso yung sarili. Yun yung kinulang. Kaya hindi na-sustain itong mga pluralist, broad coalitions na ito, no? Pero tama ka na ito yung mga impulses na pinanggagaling. At dapat, at a certain point, kailangan pag-aralan namin yan. Para ma-mitigate, kung hindi man mawala.
If there's another rupture moment,
At saka, halimbawa, ngayon, you have, sa lahat ng surveys, divided ang tao.
Wait, sir.
Parang halimbawa lang, no?
No, but what I'm saying, like, you see where we're going, right? Kasi that's why I'm talking about critical junctures, because, we'll talk about RevGov even later on, and critical ruptures. But the reason I'm doing this is because I want people to understand the richness of the history of the progressive movement. Because I'll admit, even I mean, it's even questionable how progressive I am to some people, at least, who are also even questionable themselves. But let's not talk about it.
But not a few people.
But no. Sir Walden, I know you were not proud when I said you were mentor. And, no, but seriously, Walden, so...
I'm proud of you.
Ayan! Sir, ikaw kasi.
Walden is not that perfect.
Dapat,
No, but I
Sige,
wanted
please,
to
sige.
add dito na at saka hindi lang yung domestic. Ang there's so many things that produce.
Overdetermined siya.
One of the founders of the World Social Forum.
I know, OG.
OG. But what I mean is that so these things were happening, EDSA and everything, and the left. Basically, after a real good run for almost 15 years, became one of the principal actors, no? Na marginalized kasi it was just an onlooker with EDSA. But at the same time, international then. Kasi we're talking about 1989, bagsak ang Soviet Union.
Berlin
Ito
Wall,
yung
Berlin
whatever, it might not have been perfect and everything else, but it was the first socialist state.
And the non-aligned movement began to unravel.
And then China became a capitalist country.
Basically, Fukuyama began. The whole Fukuyama era.
All I know is that yung period na yan, nagsama yung restoration of liberal democracy rito with the collapse of socialism to create real problems for the left. That even though nagkaroon ng problema yung financialization, neoliberalism, and everything, those problems were not enough to obviate the crisis of the left, which continues.
Which continues, and I want to have towards the end also a bit about the economics part because this is very important. Para maraming magagalit na naman ulit sa akin Sir Ronald dito kasi medyo. No, going back to this, so that was a critical juncture. I want to have a read of this. Now, obviously, you come from different position. You converge in Akbayan, but obviously, in the case of you, Ronald, you will be the chief. You'll be the bongo to like what bongo was to Duterte, you are to Aquino, right? Like, I always do that. Like, we still each other all the time. That's why people love us. No, and then obviously, Walden, with you, you have this multifarious, all over the place engagement with Philippine democracy and in and out. Diba? Naalala ko nung time na in Congress, daming irita sa'yo kasi biglang nasa Chile ka, biglang nasa South Africa, biglang nandun ka, inaway mo si Imelda Marcos, parang kausap mo si... Like, so all of you guys were trying to blend into the system and do some positive thing. It was difficult. But the reality is, I think all of us read it as, and I think everyone in the room, I'm sure RJ will agree, something went wrong with EDSA. What is your fundamental analysis? Was there a rot at the heart of the apple? Meaning yung EDSA revolution was really set up for failure? Or was it hijacked over time? Or was there a series of mistakes by Corazon Aquino, among others, not to purge? Because I wanted to actually also ask you...
Parang 8-hour discussion yung tanong.
No. But what we can do is, like, we can just give pointers. Because if we don't criticize the EDSA project, we cannot understand why we are here in this mess right now of a Duterte and Marcos fighting over the future of the Philippines. Ridiculous, right? So, that was...
In 2 minutes.
In 4 minutes. 4 minutes. No, seriously, Walden. Like, if you were to do a synopsis of a book on this, what will be the synopsis of the book? Ikaw kasi, Sir Walden, Sir Ronald, madaldal ka. Ito, magaling to mag-synopsis. Two paragraphs.
Unang-una, meron ng elite liberal democratic tradition ng Pilipinas.
Right.
That the American colonial period instilled. No?
Build on the Spanish one.
And then break yung Marcos dictatorship of 14 years from that. No? And then, so parang kasi hindi pa widespread yung tingin yung vision ng left. To a great extent, the anti-Marcos opposition was looking at that restoration of liberal democracy. Na that was sort of their project.
Reversion to the mean, kumbaga.
Pangalawa, the US, although it began backing dictatorships, was during the EDSA began to realize that if we stick to the formula of Reagan of just backing a dictatorship,
no matter what,
our interests would be lost. So they very cleverly maneuvered around to force Reagan to abandon Marcos. And I was able to document all the steps that they were able to do.
You mean State Departments? May mga away din mga yan, di ba?
And the pragmatists won. Okay? Yung sa kaliwa, sana the pragmatists won.
So you're saying in the empire,
ideologues that won. So, ito yung
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Hindi maximize yung moment.
That's a very good point. The wrong people won the right, the right people in the wrong side won the right moment or something like that.
Pero it was a moment, sabi nga ng aking paboritong ideologue, no? When the old is not yet dead and the new is not yet born.
Kasi andyan pa rin tayo since
and in the interregnum,
all sorts of monstrosities.
There are morbid examples na sinusulpot. So yan yung moment na yan.
Morbid symptoms.
Yan yung problema. Ang nabanggit ka ni Walden, yung strongest, more dominant left ay naging mas dogmatic. Instead na i-maximize yung opening. At yung bagong mga neoliberal ay sila yung nag-consolidate, no? At yung mga dating mga fascists nagbaliktaran. Lumipat do sa neoliberal project. Na hindi naman iniiwanan yung kanilang authoritarian tendencies, pero nag-adjust, no? Kaya yung halimbawa, focus na lang ako sa isang mahaba yan, yung tanong mo sabi ko nga pang 8-12 hours yan Anti-dynasty.
Hindi naman talaga tanong mga tanong ko, sir. Alam mo naman
Anti-dynasty. That's one of the strongest components of EDSA. Problema, somebody blinked Hindi
Yeah.
nasama yung implementing rules.
Yeah.
So, hindi gagawa ng
Enabling laws,
implementing
yeah,
rules
yeah,
ang
yeah.
isang parliament na dominated ng anti-dynasty. No, so the ethos of monopoly in both the economy and the politics remain. Kaya titignan mo yung past 38 years, no? Even the liberal ethos was pummeled.
Yeah.
No, as early as 92, the first election, no? Kung nagsama si Danding at saka si Imelda,
Panalo na
they could
sila.
have won. That was immediately after EDSA. Tapos yung pumalit, si Erap, was clearly
Pro Marcos. So you
Diba?
already see the
So,
project was
yes,
failing. Yeah.
Tapos meron kang GMA na yung ethos, muntik mo declare na state of emergency, ang ethos ay corruption at saka authoritarianism, no? At yan, may sumulpot uli na Pinoy, pero that was just a moment, no? Tapos sumulpot uli si Digong, which lahat ng masama, no, dun sa ating political system ay in-encapsulate niya. So, ang sinasabi ko lang, Richard, no, hindi naman siya nawala eh, no? The authoritarian, very conservative ethos, no, intermixed with the neoliberal ethos.
Yeah.
At yung progressive movement, hindi alam kung ano gagawin. They consolidated in a more dogmatic old mode.
And then,
habang yung mga bago
Ronald,
are
I have to
weaker.
mention this. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like parang we're omitting, the purges happened.
Yes.
And that's where things went really dark.
Yung
diba?
mid-80s hanggang late 80s, yan yung pinaka-intense, sad moment.
Yeah, the revolution
Para dun sa
devoured its
biggest-
own children.
Para
Yeah.
sa biggest element ng kaliwa. At kami, na nagsisimula mag-explore ng ibang possibilities, we were very small then.
Yeah.
No, kakabuo lang yung aming organization at wala kaming alam dyan sa mga iba't ibang permutations na yan. Perhaps, the idea, nag-gestate na sa amin. Pinag-uusapan na namin yan itong mga problemang ito. But we were very small nung panahon na yan, no? At hindi nga namin alam ano yung parliamentary arena, ano yung electoral world, no, etc., etc. But we were beginning to realize ito yung kinakailangan for the progressive movement, for the international movement. But, sinasabi ko nga, maliliit lang kami.
So, you are saying there was still a rot at the heart of the apple then? Because walang enabling laws against dynasties, which was one of the, essentially...
Actually, lahat ng ganong classic transitions democratic transitions, may weaknesses talaga yan.
Yes.
But Latin America was
No,
more
but-
successful than us, even though they had
Not
pacted transitions.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Marami rin silang setbacks.
Yeah, but I would
Yeah.
put them ahead
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
Philippines.
yeah.
Look at the left in Latin America.
yeah.
They're doing so well.
Yeah.
They produce presidents. They produce ruling parties.
Yes.
Why not the Philippines? That's my question.
But some of the ruling parties are basically being co-opted by the liberal democratic.
I understand, but you have now the third Lula, right? I mean, like, tayo, kahit isa wala pa eh.
Which
Barely.
was brought down by corruption.
Yeah, but but it's important to look at that period, as Ronald said, kasi although the constraints were there were also possibilities
Yes.
at that point.
May open-ended yung history.
And the situation was that, ang problema is that doon sa naging Aquino transition, hindi na-influence nung left because it was very confused as to what to do during that period. But if it had been a more solid force,
It could be a veto player, a shaping power.
At least a veto player, and then
very good point. Very good
created
Very good point. Yeah.
Some openings.
some openings
Exactly.
politically and economically.
And pressure,
Yeah.
pressure. Yeah.
Kasi nga wala roon what I would call the liberal centrist forces that in many ways Cory Aquino was became very permeable to pressure from the right, no? Both the local and the international, because what happened is that yung decisive economic decision at that time was, babayaran ba ng Pilipinas yung utang? And sila, alam ko sila Solita Monsod, were basically saying at that point, you cannot have a development policy in which their overall economic policy is to pay back the debt of Marcos, $26 billion. Anong ginawa? Ano nangyari is that ang lakas ng pressure ng Citibank,
Wall Street,
the Treasury Department, so that basically what became the economic policy of the Corazon Aquino regime was the priority was to repay the debt. And concretely, statistically, you're talking about 20 to 40% of the national budget every year going to repaying the debt.
Yeah.
And basically what I'm saying is that if there was a stronger progressive role
Yeah.
in the Aquino government, they could have prevented this.
Those critical
At ang
decisions.
problema sa
Yeah.
progressive movement niyan, ang ethos ng progressive movement ay to weaken the state.
Yeah.
Mag-unravel, no? Yung i-heighten mo yung contradictions para matalo siya ng armed struggle by surrounding the city
Yun.
by the countryside, no? So, ibig sabihin, yung biggest progressive group ng panahon na yun, hindi papasok masyado sa ganung klaseng discussion.
Yun ang,
Dahil it might strengthen the state functionally.
Yeah.
No? Functional enhancement ang tingin dyan ng kaliwa.
Enabler tayo.
Bakit
Yeah,
ba't ka papasok dyan? Ba't mo aayusin yung Estado? Eh, ang purpose natin
Yeah.
ay durugin
Rupture,
yan
yeah.
through the armed struggle. So may ganong klaseng fundamental weakness, yung progressive movement at that time, at that juncture, na nag-open. No? Yun ang sinasabi ko. At yung iba, nagsisimula pa lang mag-experiment. Halimbawa, kami, we organized the first workers' control self-managed cooperatives in Basilan. Some of us are exploring within those
Yeah.
limits, no?
Yeah.
Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng socialism? No, ito yung ibig sabihin namin. Wala kami hindi kami pumapasok sa framework na weaken the contradictions at para mabago o madurog fundamentally ng armed struggle. Ako namin experiment, no?
Yeah.
Pasok kami sa local elections, no? Pasok kami eventually nung panahon ni GMA, we explored relationships with military activists within the coercive arm of the state,
Right.
no? Tapos sinubukan namin na magpatakbo originally dahil local lang kami tsaka party list, subukan natin national. At kahit natalo twice si Risa, naka-generate kami ng
Yes.
millions of votes which we never
Right.
generated before. So na-break yung glass ceiling. May isang kaliwa nakapasok sa Congress. So at the same time, inaamin ko, you cannot hold that na yan lang yung strategy. There are others,
Yeah.
no? Pero merong mga successes, no, ng panahon na yan, no? Na ang problema, we are just a small part of the progressive movement.
So basically, all of this argument so far is the balance of forces. Ang problema is that in the balance of forces, the left was either too divided or too aloof to make the right moderating effect. So I think this one read. But the other thing I want to focus back, and Walden, if there's anything that perhaps would be one of your biggest legacies, your emphasis on something that very few people in the mainstream, even mainstream academic circles discuss, which is the bad policies, this full, throttled and full-fledged embrace of the worst possible combination of economic policies, which may explain many things. I mean, RJ, I want to ask you, di ba? Tingnan mo, itong explanation, kung narinig natin, bakit ang pangit ng economy ng Philippines kumpara sa mga kapitbahay natin yan? Parating sinasabi natin, di ba, dahil democracy tayo, magulo tayo. The Lee Kuan Yew argument is, you have too much freedom. Now, I want us to listen to what I believe is the right explanation. Walden, what were the bad economic policies that we stumbled upon or embraced even during the transition from Marcos to EDSA regime that really cursed us for decades to come?
well, unang-una,
You mentioned the debt already, right?
During the worst mistake of the Corazon Aquino administration was to prioritize repaying the debt.
Of Marcos na questionable, na odious debt, na pwede mo i-renegotiate naman.
Kasi ang problema dyan is that pag 20 to 40% of your budget
goes to debt
is going
servicing.
to the debt, wala nang capital investment.
To put in infrastructure,
Wala na,
to poverty, healthcare.
You're just
yeah.
paying personnel na lang.
Yeah.
Now, so it's not surprising that between 1986 and 1992, the Philippines grew only about 1.25% a year.
Yeah.
And the rest,
10% almost.
our neighbors were flying
Yeah.
off. The second thing was, nung pagdating ni Fidel Ramos, ito na yung full-blown
Privatization.
privatization,
project.
neoliberal. It was pushed by people like Ciel Habito, etc., etc. And at
We're on the
all
same page
levels,
on inquiry. Yeah.
at all levels, the
Kaya mahal ang
idea,
electricity, tubig, kasi
Yeah,
privatize lahat.
Privatized,
Oligarchs ang nag-take over. Yeah, exactly.
Deregulation,
etc.
So sa isang banda, wala nang pera yung Estado para mag-invest sa kalsada, sa infrastructure, sa healthcare. Pangalawa, wala na rin pera ang tao na bumili ng electricity kasi ang napakamahal, privatize everything, right? So lubog sa utang rin ng tao.
And talagang
At nangyari yung regulatory capture.
regulatory capture.
Which means yung kung sinong dapat bantayan para hindi bababuyin itong process ng privatization, medyo binaboy na rin sila.
Sila yung nagbabantay sa sarili.
Sarili nila. Yeah, exactly.
So this was a time na
This is important because people have to understand, kaya nga ang pangit ng economy ng Philippines kumpara sa kapitbahay natin. These are the bad policies.
This was a time that we had malakas pa yung labor movement in late 1980s. Pero owing to neoliberal policies na anti-labor, tinatakot ang mga workers. Pag nag-union kayo, pupunta sa China. Pupunta sa Thailand yung mga kwan, no? So, malakas yung...
So, basically, when you say neoliberal, again, for the purpose of the audience, ito yung primacy of market sentiment. Investors' confidence para natin. Investor confidence. Ano gusto ng mga negosyante?
Isa rin problema natin, no? You could have organized a social pact, pero wala kang modernizing elites. Di ba? So, ang naiwan sa'yo ay elites na carpetbaggers. Quick money. Return on investment. No?
Retail, real estate.
And it helps shape the economic contours of the next decades.
So,
hanggang yan,
So, and then of course, dun sa fight over tariffs, they wanted to bring down that tariffs from, mataas yung tariffs natin noon, but they wanted to bring it down to level of Chile.
So,
11%.
Sorry, when you say tariff, these are the taxes we put on foreign imports to kind of protect our domestic industries, right? So, tinanggal mo rin yan, right?
Tinanggal yan. Kasi sabi nila Ciel Habito, pag kaya ng Chile to reduce tariffs to 11%,
si Chile
mas kaya ng Pilipino to
mas
bring
macho
it
tayo.
to 4%.
Macho tayo.
Boom! Ano nangyari? Namatay ang
yung Marikina industry.
Marikina and
naalala mo, RJ, may mga shoes yung Marikina dati. Pansin mo, wala na yung industry na China na lahat.
Pasok tayo sa WTO, na
World Trade Organization,
ni Kwan. We considered on all eliminating quantitative tariffs, quantitative protection. Nasira ang agrikultura natin. And so basically, with your two dynamic poles in any economy, industry and manufacturing, dying because of government policies of deregulation and
na walang kinalaman ito sa oligarchs. This is a technocratic...
No, may kinalaman. The oligarchs became the monopolist. No?
Yes, that's true. But the point is, Walden is saying, wag natin kalimutan yung role ng mga malinis tignan na PhDs, na professors, na hindi naman kurakot, pero mali yung policy decisions. That's what I'm saying.
Definitely. Kasi nasilaw sila sa neoliberal economics ng US. So basically,
it's the time of Hayek. The ideologue of neoliberalism.
Ang naiwan sa basically with your manufacturing gun,
Friedman na to
with your agriculture gun, the only thing that was active was labor export.
And rent-seeking
and of course
industries.
The rent-seeking industries, no?
But the labor export is what let families go afloat. Kasi otherwise, walang job, walang trabaho. There's nothing in the Philippines.
Which actually started during the dictatorship.
Of Marcos.
Simula yan, no, early 80s.
Pero na-institutionalize lalo nung panahon ng EDSA na parang naging pillar of foreign policy pa natin. Trabaho ng DFA, di ba? We wrote something about poverty of Philippine foreign policy. Hanggang ngayon, galit ang DFA sa akin dahil sa sinulat.
Pero the material base was there after EDSA.
Kasalanan talaga ni Marcos yan. Kaso, lumala.
You have an intelligent workforce after EDSA na walang opportunities.
Or ang baba ng sahod, bakit pa sila magstay dito?
So, ang worst thing is yung cultural education impact yan. Kasi kids learn that walang opportunities Pilipinas. So,
vocational na lang
your education is really a preparation to go abroad.
Vocational.
And that's na institutionalized na yan sa ating mga youth.
Exactly.
The only place to go is not in the Philippines but abroad.
Unless,
or work with foreign companies, call centers.
Unless pupunta ka sa NGOs.
Right.
Na magaling maghanap ng, ano bang, meron kami niyan. May mga movement ka.
By the mid-90s, naubos na rin.
Naubos na rin.
So yung mga, I guess ang sinasabi natin is, if we look at it in a macro
exactly. And the economics part, which is very important.
We have to start teaching economics again.
Yeah.
You know, kasi talagang nasilaw itong market economics. That basically, ano ba yung UP School of Economics? You know,
Yeah,
all it
yeah.
teaches is that just leave everything to the market, and the market will work wonders.
But
That's what's
you're a
happened.
sociologist. Why are our economies like that? Because, you know, there were the Berkeley boys in the Suharto administration. It's like you have also this kind of Ivy League graduates or American influence in other countries. But as you have written extensively on new developmental state development, hindi sila ganon ka nasilaw sa American influence.
Yeah.
Essentially, the Friedman, post-Hayek, new Hayek
Actually,
influence. Why? Dahil mahilig tayo
Like who?
mag-impress?
Sino yung mga yan?
Hindi, itong mali.
Sa atin, wala masyado.
Sa atin nga wala. Pero pag tinignan mo yung South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, even if
Thailand, obviously.
Thailand,
And now Vietnam.
basically, they spoke free market language,
Kunyari lang.
but they protected their industries.
Like China. Also
Yeah,
China.
basically.
Exactly, China. Yeah.
Or yung
Basically.
kinita nila from corruption, hindi nila dinala sa Switzerland.
Yeah.
Ni-reinvest nila.
And then nung sa kita nila sa reinvestment,
Yeah.
bili sila ng wine sa
Yeah.
France. Pero may investment na.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But basically, this is why yung mga neighbors natin na mga technocrats, they did not practice what they preached. And they were right.
Because they just wanted to impress foreigners.
To impress
Yeah,
the Americans
Oh.
and the IMF. Now, we're making
yeah.
neoliberal
But
reforms.
behind the scenes, they're protecting their industries and all. Yeah.
Eh tayo, our technocrats practiced what they preach.
They were true believers.
They were true believers.
That's the problem.
I mean, this...
Masyadong sincere.
Pero
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
yun yung isang weakness naman. Babalik ako sa progressive
Yeah.
movement. Sa moment na yan, habang nagdo-dominate yung neoliberal
Technocrats and all,
et cetera, within and outside sa ating bansa, yung progressive movement ay hindi Gramscian. Hindi war of movement, war of position.
Yeah.
Within the confines of the state, pero actually outside as
Sa
well,
civil
complementing
society,
each
yeah,
other.
yeah, yeah.
At saka yung third plank, yung cultural ideological engagement.
Yeah.
Yun yung kulang. Paano?
Definitely.
Yung neoliberalism became dominant dahil mahina rin yung ilang mga intellectuals natin yung nag-engage niyan within war of position at saka war of
Yeah.
movement sa state, no? So yun ang sinasabi ko.
And then they'll put some complicated mathematical formula based on very questionable premises and then
yes.
intimidated ng tao. Hindi gets parang
Yeah,
they
so-
treat economics like physics which is
So
not.
nandito no? Hindi lang siya organizational,
Yeah.
war of movement, war of position, kundi also ideological.
And communications
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
I mean, you listen to the leftists, it's all this
Yeah.
jargons, fights between Trotsky and Stalin. Like, no one relates to that stuff.
Kaya sumulpot yung populist temptation.
Yeah.
The populist ethos naman. Dahil sila yung nakaharness ng disenchantment ng masses dito sa mga failed institutions na ito. Hindi tayo. No, may
Yeah.
nakuha tayong kaunti. Pero basically, ang nakakuha nito are the ERAPs, no, are the Dutertes, no, combination ng Marcos at saka Dutertes. So yan yung nakakuha ng ganyang klaseng ethos. Na dapat sana tayo nag-harness. This is massive disenchantment,
Yeah.
no? Pero nasaan tayo?
That's a perfect segue because EDSA 1 was not the only EDSA. There would be an EDSA 2. But there's another EDSA that everyone forgets, the pro-Arab EDSA. Panahon ni Arroyo, marami namatay. And
Doon mo makikita yung seeds ng ganitong klaseng
exactly.
populism.
That's where, so Mike, si Garrido, right? Another sociologist, he did a very good analysis na doon mo rin makita yung seeds ng Dutertismo na how the Filipino middle class and chattering classes dismissed the EDSA 3 as a bunch of bayaran, squatter people, when in fact, they truly believe in Arab as their champion.
Balo si Era ba naging representation nila?
Even if
Yung
he's a
kanilang-
flawed guy.
kanilang galit.
Exactly.
Yung kanilang
yeah.
galit. No? Siya ang naging representation. In a way, fast forward, na si Digong ang naging representation.
Exactly.
Nung galit nila, nung kanilang mga fears. No?
Including the Mindanao
Yeah.
factor, which was not there. This is now.
Yeah.
So we say
Pero-
continuity from EDSA 3.
Pero dalawang volume siya.
Dalawang volumes yan. No. But that sets the point. I think we're almost done with the Marx. Let's talk about Marcos, right? So we had some discussion about the father, Marcos Sr. Us as the Ilocanos, we should know a lot about this too. What is your read of Marcos Jr. compared to the father? I mean, the joke in Baguio is he's more Romualdez than Marcos. You know, nice guy, party ba? Like, malumanay.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. We'll discuss that. No, but what is your read of BBM so far, and this complete conflagration? Because 2021 pa lang, we were talking about, House of Duterte Marcos. Because it was an alliance of inconvenience.
Yeah.
I can rather, not even inconvenience. What is your read of this conflagration, and what could that mean for a Marcos Jr., Marcos second administration?
Well, I had a personal experience of Marcos because he was
Your colleague in Congress. Yeah.
in the last, and as I wrote, he was fun together with Romualdez, no?
Yeah.
Yung kasi niya, they would show up but just trot around and not really participate. No? So, walang naiwan na kwan. So, I'm not really surprised that napaka-shallow yung understanding niya of
Hindi
domestic.
siya katulad ng tatay.
Yeah, and international. That tatay definitely is Machiavellian smart. No?
Oo.
Ito, si Marcos Jr. is neither Machiavellian nor smart.
Shakespearean daw.
Hindi naman
Young King Lear
Shakespearean,
daw.
you know.
Loko talaga
You
sila.
know.
Young King Lear.
Kasi yung Machiavellian strategist niya, hindi siya, kundi iba sa family
Yung
niya.
mga, Romualdez yata ang pangalan.
So, yan yung problema nitong
Mamang to.
Yeah, kasi basically, at least naman, pag presidente ka, you should have a grasp of where things are at domestically and internationally.
And a willfulness. Tinatreating ka
And
na
a
ng assassination,
willfulness.
sasabihin mo, never say
Para
that.
parapan kayo sinasampal nung
Yeah.
kabila. Yeah.
So, isa na lang kasi I follow this, is
Yeah.
that kasi may laziness rin and ang nangyari is that when you come to our foreign policy, in-outsource na yan.
Sa mga kano.
Yeah. I mean, it's like everything in our foreign policy is outsourced at this point. To the point
Parang
that...
labor markets natin, outsource na rin ba?
Hindi, ang problema ko pa nga is the absence of a clear foreign policy about that. Diyan no? Parang, dapat yung ibang bansa kasi nakikinabang sa ganyang klaseng foreign policy. Taiwan, hindi naman tayo nakikinabang.
So, yung question ko nga, linuloko yung mga friends sa
Sir Ronald,
DFA
yung phone mo
is,
yata na ulit, sorry.
linuloko nga yung mga friends ko sa DFA, meron pa bang talagang function ang DFA natin? Pag na-outsource na lahat yung mga key foreign policy decisions. But back to your question, is that when we look at him, I think we should go beyond the personality
Of course,
to the faction itself.
Yeah.
And when you
the
go
balance
to the
of forces
faction,
inside,
when we look at the faction itself, then there are real danger signs there. No? So I think it's important to go beyond the personalities, say Sarah or Bongbong, to see that this is really a dynastic struggle in which Machiavellians are involved, even if the key personalities might not be that smart.
Yeah.
Unibrats nga.
Well, magdadigress ako ng konti. Yung fundamentals, I agree with Walden.
Konti lang.
I agree with Walden. Pero ang strength at saka weakness nitong pinapaliwanag natin na two dynastic struggles. Itong dalawang dynasties na ito, may mga kahinaan din eh. Like yung the Duterte project ay nagsisimula na mag-unravel. Yung kanilang old project ay hindi na umuubra. Medyo laos na rin eh. No? Kaya ang kita mo sa call surveys, bumababa sila. Kahit malakas pa rin sila. No?
Yeah.
Yung Marcos project, ganun din. Dahil matagal lang nawala sila doon sa tatay.
Yeah.
At yung tatay, may clear political project.
Right.
Ito hindi ganun kaklaro. No? May elements of continuity pero hindi ganun ka-strong.
Walang paradigm,
May
walang
elements
vision,
ng bagong Pilipinas pero hindi ito yung ideological moorings ng tatay. No? So, meron din siyang weaknesses. Buti na lang. No? Dahil ang problema, itong weaknesses na ito ay pumupunta sa isang bagong kid on the block. No, pumupunta ito sa
Tulfos.
ipatulpo mo.
Yeah.
For lack of an alternative, no?
Right.
Dahil yung progressive movement neither here nor there pa rin, no? Ang sinasabi ko, this is a good opportunity para yung sinasabi natin kanina, yung pag-harness ng disenchantment sa ating mga weak political, failed political, economic institutions ay makuha ng isang bagong political project. Pero that political project is not being hatched. No, yun yung problema ko, no? It's not being discussed even eh. No? Yan yung okay lang sana magkamali ka sa political project, pero at least meron ka. Or at least pinag-uusapan, pinagdidebatihan. Hindi ko makita 'yon. No? Tapos yung delicate balance in this transition, no? Ay wala na yung new generation ng ideological operators. Na,
Maybe
okay,
Ronald's.
malinaw yung ideological mooring mo.
Yeah.
Pero, pipigilan mo itong monsters na gustong bumalik, na makabalik. Dahil pag bumalik yan, iwa-wipe out tayo niyan. No? These mass murderers. No? Pipigilan mo rin yan. No? Itong mga pro-China na ito. Pero at the same time, babanatan mo ito. Itong sinasabi ni Juan na pro-US, no, outsourcing ng ating foreign policies, another foreign superpower, itong weaknesses sa corruption, etc. Babanatan mo rin yan. Pero it's very delicate na babanatan mo yan, pero ayaw mo naman na makinabang itong mga halimaw na to. No? So, kailangan mo ng mga ideological operators na binabalanse yan. Na habang binabanatan mo ito at pinipigilan mo ito, ay kine-create mo yung alternative. Pag hindi mo kine-create yung alternative, you are left to choose between two lesser or greater evils, no? Yun yung sinasabi ko na
parang yun ang sinasabi ni Haydarian, di ba?
Delicate. Sino yun?
Dami nagalit sa kanya.
Yun yung balance na ginagawa natin.
Nagpaparinig
Hindi pwedeng hindi banatan ito.
Yeah.
Pero at the same time, pipigilan mong makabalik itong mga monsters na ito. While at the same time, proposing an alternative. Yun yung kulang sa akin yung proposing the alternative of the political
I want to
project.
go to the alternative, but Walden, probably you disagree with me on this because my point is, it's not a lesser evil question; it's a greater evil question between BBM and the Dutertes. On one side, I mean, you can say each of them are giving in too much to foreign powers. You can say each of them are corrupt. Pero one side has 30,000 EJK on its ledger. One side has, I will openly assassinate, threaten on its ledger. Right? One side has these massive troll farms and aggressive in ways that you don't see with BBM. Again, this is not to trivialize what Marcos has mean and definitely the horrible budget issue. But do you think that's healthy if we argue along those ways? Because a lot of people disagree with me when I use that argument of greater evil argument. Because hindi ko naman sinasabi na let's overlook what Marcos is doing. I mean, we're still talking about him. But,
Hindi ba?
But don't forget. But don't forget.
Just heckling. Just heckling.
I was just about to say na actually hindi na kailangan na baby Ronald kasi andyan pa rin si Ronald Liamas.
No, because,
but you can saying, like, this is creating a lot of tensions and debate. Kaya marami namang galit sa akin when I emphasize that.
No, the problem is, I realize, because that is the Trillanes argument, right?
No. Kaya nga, na-interview ko rin siya parate. Kasi, parang that's the...
Hindi lang ako heckling.
Wait. That's the Trillanes-Ronald thesis. Okay. Which Haydarian somehow agrees with.
I won't get caught dead with that.
Oh my, kukunin ko nga yung kape ko.
No, basically.
Walang na want to punch ako doon.
No, but my sense about it is
Sige lang.
It's
Napainom tuloy.
we should not really be taking sides, and I think we should really let them basically fight in a gladiatorial way that ends up with both of them.
Mutual destruction. Yeah. Neither
mutual.
nor. I always said Trotsky, di ba? Neither nor.
Ang
Don't
problema,
choose.
Walden,
Yeah.
no, for now, the alternative is another
Duterte, yun
another
nga eh.
populist, or the RevGov, waiting on the wings.
Yeah,
no?
yun nga.
They're there, no? Tempting the alternative, the third pole. So, tayo, yung parang medyo wala tayo dyan. So, kung magwasakan ito, yes, okay yun. Di ba?
Yeah.
Pero, kaya inuulit ko, dahil wala tayong progressive third alternative.
Magkaroon ng vacuum.
Ito yung dalawa na nagiging dominant alternative.
Yeah.
No?
But
Yun yung
then I think you have to really estimate, because I will not underestimate the powers of the state that are
At the disposal of BBM.
BBM.
I agree also with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Wala akong disagreement dyan.
and that, as I said, if you look at it factionally, there are people within the BBM camp that are hardline reactionaries.
Yeah, and they want charter
And
change.
Machiavellians.
And they want
Yeah.
charter change.
Right.
I agree.
But not very intelligent.
Well,
Hard line doesn't mean
yeah,
deep.
yeah.
Parang
Just
Sure.
means like,
Pag meron kang konting alam doon sa Elder Marcos.
yeah.
Ito, yung
Malayo.
Yung kanyang,
Sure.
yung kanyang core group these are strategies, these are operators, these are, di ba? These are intelligent, worthy adversaries, no? Ibig sabihin, ito yung gusto mo makalaban, na an enemy that will define you. Medyo kulang
Yeah,
yun.
okay, what about it's
You
a
mean you're missing Vic Rodriguez?
oh my God. The Kingmaker. The King. Parang Walden,
Medyo
wala yung
masyadong overrated.
wala yung book niya, Kingmaker. Hinanap ko.
Masyadong overrated yun.
Tinatago ko.
At saka kay Enrile, yung mga... No, but, okay, what about this argument? Sequential. First, you bring down the Dutertes. This year, hopefully, ganun daw. And then, once the Dutertes are out, we can focus all out in the lame duck years of BBM to set it out for 2020. What if it's that argument? Because when Trotsky said neither nor, we're not here to choose between either the Prussians and Austrians or the Entente forces. He was also kind of like, there's an element of balancing in there. So it's no one is saying choose.
Yeah,
What you're saying is you sequence. First, you take down the Dutertes, then you'll focus on
Yeah.
Marcos and the lame duck. Then you set out for 2020.
Di ba sabi rin ni Trotsky, peace tayo?
Akala ko sinabi ni
Peace tayo. Huwag
Trillanes.
tayo papasok sa
Wala, Trillanes,
Huwag tayo
Trotsky.
papasok sa gera. Peace tayo.
Wow. So yung
And then he had
inheritor,
Civil War.
yung
Yes,
inheritor ni Trotsky ngayon is the Iglesia ni Cristo.
Ayun. Oh, ano, peace rally. What is your read of the peace rally, Walden? How peaceful and how rally? Kasi yung SMNI, ang daming drone shot, 21 angles.
Basta nung nakita ko yun, and everyone being cramped in that space,
Uy, malapit dito yung ano nila.
nakita ko, oh my God. Sabi ko, nasaan yung mga CR dito?
Yeah. Oh, mahirap. Oh, yung
Ang hirap.
logistics.
Para sa mga senior,
Yeah.
kasi pag senior ka, hindi mo na
Right.
mapipigil in 6 hours.
May mga
May
portal-
dagat
Ayun,
doon, di ba? May,
Hindi,
may,
pero
ano.
if you go to the CR, just to get there will take 1
Yeah.
hour.
Hindi, kaya nga may adult pampers eh.
Yeah.
Yeah, pero hindi sila nag-distribute niyan.
Yeah.
Pag
Baka
okay
dinedrone
lang,
drop,
pag-
dinedrone drop, dinedrone drop. Meron
Wala
lang.
tayo sa oras, kaya i-conclude mo lang yung direction.
Ayun. Diba?
Sobrang haba
Okay.
na to, ha?
Hindi, tapos na.
Just reminding the host, no?
We are INC na. Tapos na tayo.
Yung mga tanong mo, pang 1 week
Hindi.
eh.
Pero sinasabi ko, we're thinking forward.
Ang element na
Ron
gusto
to.
lang i-add dyan, of course, we still don't know what Trump will do.
Yeah.
Pero,
Trump doesn't know until now, so let's
true.
just be fair.
But the US pretty much put
Will have-
itself behind BBM. No?
So you don't buy this argument that Trump will be nice to Digong?
No.
Na, kasi parang yun ang sinabi mo
no,
noon, na baka
I
Trump
don't
will...
know.
No.
I don't know what Trump is going to do because he's the most unpredictable guy in the world.
Yeah.
But all I know is that during the Biden administration, yung guarantee
Yeah.
or yung security yung
Invested sila kay
insurance
BBM.
ni BBM
Yeah.
was the US. And some people will say it will continue. I'm not sure at this
So in that...
point in time.
Ako, mas sure ako. Basta
Actually-
hindi ko sure kung alam ni Hagseth ASEAN ang Philippines.
Actually, Walden, kung meron kang mga strategies yung gobyerno like Hidarian,
Yun.
mas magaling makipag-away. No? Mas magaling makipagbakbakan. Wala akong nakikita. There's a black hole eh.
Yun nga eh.
No? Yun yung problema nila. Ang
But is it
medyo-
because
ang
we
medyo
are doing the dirty job?
Ang medyo malinaw ang political project, the Dutertes.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Perhaps because nandun sa Ebasco, perhaps meron sila mga political operator na mas magagaling dito sa mga Marcoses. Pero yan yung engagement ngayon. Kahit hawak nila yung powers of the state na sinasabi mo. Hindi ko sila ina-underestimate. Pero hinahalongkat ko eh. Nasaan yung mga strategies? Nasaan yung mga operators? Nasaan no? It's so far
Why
away
is
from
that?
the body.
Why is that wrong? Is it because BBM was never part of the national elite for quite some time? They were really mostly based in Ilocos. Is it because he over-relied on the GMA and Duterte
Diba
people?
lagi natin sinasabi yung Heraclitus framework?
Right,
Character is destiny.
right.
No? At the most powerful man in the middle of this battle ay ganito yung character.
Walang center of gravity.
Ganyan yung
kumbaga.
kaya may
Yeah,
back
yeah,
yun.
yeah.
So, yun yung isang mahalagang element nito.
So last point, alternative. So all of our discussion about Marx to Marcos was the critical junctures when the left either kapos, kulang, or even made fatal strategic mistakes or tactical mistakes at this. How can, when I say left here, I want to be more like in the spirit of Dodong, as inclusive as I can. So I'll even include liberal people, right? Because after all,
there would be no socialism, Marxism without
Yeah,
liberalism, because
yeah,
liberals
there are,
recognize the equality of human dignity.
Sure.
So I think some people in the left forget our debt to Kant and all of these liberal thinkers, right? So we owe them. So in the greatest, let's stretch the idea of progressive as much to even include Haydarian para matuwa si Ronald. Hindi ko alam kung maabot kay Ronald, pero sige, stretch ko pa ng ganyan. How can that force come together? Like the pink movement, that million people, the real million people. Hindi ko alam sa 1,218,062 yung mga, hindi ko alam yung ganun ng count, but parang million yung lumabas sa pink movement eh. Actually, I never asked you, Walden, about that. Honestly, anong tingin mo sa pink movement? Was that a bunch of like rich kids, konyo, going to Ayala and having picnic? Yeah, exactly. Or you think there could be more in that? There could be more in that pink movement.
No, I think there was a real aspiration there for an opposite kind of
politics
to what was represented by Duterte's and the Marcoses.
Right.
No, that alliance. So a lot, ang sense ko ron, maraming rin sa kanila na disillusion after that. But I think they're there, and maybe we can end with this, that the potential for such a movement is there.
Absolutely.
And I think we really, the different groups from liberals to the left really have to be responsible at this point and say, we have to get our shit together. And, let's get beyond this factional
ego fights.
And just recognize our differences, but work on the areas where we have common interests.
Right.
No? Kasi that's really what is so badly needed at this point in time. Kasi in terms of ideas, in terms of policies, in terms of ending neoliberalism, industrial policy, nasa lahat yan. That's all there at this point. It's
you don't start from zero.
You don't. The thing is, your base has to get together, and ang sense ko is we that's the task of the moment, and if we can only say, okay, meron tayong differences, but let's work together. That's a start.
So kaya Ronald, yung mga bumabanat ng ibang podcast channels, pakisabi magpakabait na sila sa atin. Now, to close volume 1 of our...
Short pa lang. Report.
Sige.
Sa napag-usapan.
Sige lang.
Ayaw mo na ako bigyan ng pagkakataon eh.
No, I want to give you parang opening ka na. Jaran, Ronald.
Ang tawag ko kasi dyan sa Unity, a Pyrrhic victory. Then from the very start, it was doomed to fragment. No?
Divorce waiting to happen.
Wala namang substance. It's a hot air balloon. Tapos yung the Lenny Pink movement was a glorious defeat. It was defeated, pero tignan mo yung voluntarism. Tignan mo yung hundreds of thousands, even millions na dinadala yung sarili, hindi hakot sa mga mobilizations. No? This has never happened before since EDSA. At alam mo yung limits niya, nagpasya si Lenny during the exact day of filing. No? So, merong bahagi ng populasyon na diskontento, nagsisimula naghanap ng alternative, hindi siya ideological, pero meron silang pinanggagalingan na moral imperative. Teka, mali ito eh. Ayoko nito eh. Hindi siya ganun ka-consolidated, pero nandun sila. Tapos nangyari pa itong pagkawasak ng Unity. Imagine mo yung disenchanted dyan na naghahanap ng alternative. Kung na-consolidate mo ito, pwede mo ma-harness yun eh. Yung disenchanted sa Unity na nawasak, na walang na-deliver. Diba? Ang problema, dahil hindi natin na-harness ito, part of this ay sino ba? Diba? It's a battle of brands. We have to create a brands na ha-harness yung disenchantment sa mga failed, weak institutions, pero at the same time, hindi papasok sa temptation nitong mga reactionary populism. No? Mahaba yan, pero parang ganun yung hinahanap natin.
Of course.
Para hindi tayo matempt sa revolutionary gov, military junta alternative, at the same time, another populist, no? Saan tayo papasok? No, yan yung kanayan, no? Ang sinasabi nga ni Walden, we don't start from zero. Pero ang problema, nandun tayo sa 0.01. No? Hindi nga siya zero, pero ba't di natin minamaximize? With all these ideas, no? Several generations of struggle, bakit ba't nandito tayo? Ba't nasa kangkungan tayo? No, so sa akin, isang mahalagang element is also soul searching, no, summation, na wag naman tumagal, pero after that, let's consolidate the alternative. No, yun yung kulang.
Yeah, I mean, just to end on this, I'm slightly more optimistic than usual. I mean, I was just with sila Kiko, with sila the Lima, with Bam and all of that. I think, first of all, there's a recognition saan sila nagkakulang. Maybe not as much as they should. Iba yung framework sila. But at least in the private conversation na I sense na there's a bit of recognition. Baka nakinig pa sila sa mga sinasabi natin. I think Bam wearing pink, which is one of the suggestions we made in RRM, is a kind of an attempt of saying, we have to build on what we demonstrated back in 2022. And yes, I'll tell you what, in Bicol, even in Bicol, people were critical. Bakit after elections biglang nawala yung opposition? Why didn't they hold on more? So, even in Bicol, in the heartland of pro-Lenny, sentiment, even there I heard people. So, for me, these are embers, no? Nang baka pwede pa. So, 2025 is gonna look very hard. But I'm slightly optimistic about chances going to 2027, 2026 to prepare for the next big
Meron
thing.
ka ba, Walden, narinig? Parang part 2? Parang part 2?
Yeah, wait. I think you see where and I think, and I called Lenny the comeback queen of 2024. Kasi di ba, Lenny parang nawala, tapos biglang bumalik. Next thing you know, Mark Oleta, Robin Padilla, Sara Duterte, everyone wants to be with her, yung effect niya, and then Riza Ontiveros. The only social democrat we have managed to bring there since Isabelo de los Reyes is now a mainstream matapang leader everyone looks up. For me, these are positive things we can build on. So on that note, let's finish the volume 1 of Marx to Marcos discussion. I hope, Walden, mukhang napaisip ka na si Walden, gusto, wag ka muna magbana.
Oy,
No.
I-publicize mo yung palabas na libro ni Walden.
Oh, kaya so Walden, to give you the honor since we are in your place in the glory of all of these books na walang Vic Rodriguez. I'm very disappointed. May Malutikia book rin yata. Like, Walden, can you tell everyone about your new upcoming book and whether Ronald Liamas should be worried about mentions of him? Kasi tell all ang ano mo yata eh. Parang Vic Rodriguez, Kingmaker.
Well, let me just, Ronald, would you pass that book on top?
On the top, yeah. Okay.
But before I say that, I'm just saying that the person with the greatest potential to lead this movement, I think, and believe talaga ako sa kanya, is Riza Ontiveros.
Exactly.
It's Riza Ontiveros. No? And I think that
Absolutely.
we need to be able to assist her in this project. No, kasi talagang she's proved her mettle during the last year.
Absolutely.
She's the only senator that dared to bring down Duterte in the hearings. No?
Alice
And,
go.
yeah.
Kiboloy.
Yeah, talagang, you know, it's
OG.
great. It's great.
OG.
But anyway, yeah, it's global battlefield.
Even greater is your book.
Well, it's a memoirs of mainly when I became an activist, both locally and internationally.
Yeah.
And as I said, it has, you cannot just write about good things, but you also, sabi nga ni Clint Eastwood, you have to also write about not only the good, but
Ronald,
also
you also have to
the
write
bad
about
and the ugly.
the good, the bad, the good, the bad, and the
ugly. and the sexy.
and the spicy.
Yeah, especially
the sexy para style.
Yeah, the sexy and the spicy is
Ayan
all
na.
here.
Woo!
So
Volume 2, volume 2.
so tell all. So
Oh my God.
but if there
Parang
are
kamukha ko yung guy na dyan. Like,
yeah,
may
but
bigot.
if there are people who get really offended, sabi ko
Sorry
naman
na lang.
dito, they can resort to yung ginawa ni Sara Duterte to me, which is bring me to court on cyber libel.
Okay. I thought mag-zoom tapos mumura.
But
Assassinate.
sinabi ko na, but they
Wait,
should-
Walden, I didn't want to bring that up, kasalanan mo yan.
No,
Yung abogado mo kausap ko mamaya.
but I warned them that I have a very good lawyer,
Yun yan.
si Estar Olamparo, who would not
Nakikinig yata. Bigla.
who not only would is a good lawyer, but even if I already confessed to reputational murder,
Yeah.
she would still be able to get me free.
Yeah.
So yun ang
lawyer, no?
yun ang lawyer.
Pero proud ka pa rin sa akin, Walden, di ba?
Of course.
Of course, yeah.
Definitely.
Sorry, Ronald.
The good and the bad and
Anyway, the book
Yeah.
will be available by mid-March. And
Mid-March.
then we'll have some
Ateneo
launches
de
over
Manila
here.
University.
Yeah.
But there will be a US version, abridged version.
Yeah, it's. I'm going to the US for a tour, book tour,
Book tour, yeah.
and Ronald is there, and you're
Baka
there,
naman.
and you're there.
You mean in the
etc.
book? I thought in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
US.
yeah. No,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think.
But I'm not gonna tell you whether it's
good or bad or
in
ugly.
good or bad or ugly or sexy.
Basta spice na, yun na sana.
That's right.
Actually,
Pero-
sexy lang, okay na kami ni Ronald.
Parang mamaya, yung copy ng book na yun, biglang mawawala.
Ano kaya itong spicy yung mention ko sa iyo rito, Ronald?
Okay na, boring. Okay lang.
Basta, as we agreed, the only thing worse than being the ugly in the discussion is not to be mentioned at all. So, kaya may volume 2 rin to. May volume 2 rin yan. Sorry, Walden.
No.
Just in case. Baka may volume 2 rin. Alright, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very I know this is really, I'm not sure how many podcasts in the Philippines discuss like Marx to Marcos and all of that.
And Popeye fried chicken.
And
Naghintay
Popeye
sa
is
atin.
waiting for us and my 2 p.m. meeting siya. Thank you so much everyone for joining Volume 1 of Marx to Marcos with Conversations with History. Parang yung sa Berkeley, di ba? Conversations
Three
with
generations.
Three generations and a half. Like and a half si RJ. Salamat again for joining us and continue to support us on different platforms. And by the way, my good news ako, I'm gonna launch a new podcast series together with our progressive friends. I call it the Change Makers. Kasama dyan. No. Naghanap ako ng sponsors, kaya huwag ka maingay.
Another one?
And doon, hindi na kasama si Ronald, pero isama kita, Risa. So essentially, I'm gonna try to get Vico Soto, maybe Mayor Magal. I mean, a couple of change makers across the country, in Iloilo, in provinces. So we're looking at 12 of change makers in the country who could give us ideas about what could be a third positive alternative. So meron tayong bagong series. So hopefully, itong volume 1 of Marx to Marcos would be kind of a forward for that.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat, Sir Ronald. Ay,
Okay.
Sir Walden. Maraming salamat, Justice Carpio.
Ganun. Fisco.
Sige na nga. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat, guys. Thank you so much sa lahat ng mga
Okay.
sumuporta sa atin. Oh my God.